Hi, I'm Emmalynn.
And I'm Jessica.
And today we are here with our September wrap-up. I can say, I feel like this was the best reading month of all year.
Whoa.
I don't know about, like, amount, but enjoyment.
Yeah.
Like, I equally enjoyed almost all of it.
For me, so I thought it was going to be a really bad month and I wasn't going to read much. But then at the end, I, like, gained momentum.
But then she got sick, so
true.
she could just lay in bed and read.
That is true. I will say, if we're going to just go ahead and get right into it, the first book that I read this month, I feel like almost put me in a reading slump. And that's a segue into Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. Now, this is the second book in the Red Rising trilogy, which is interesting that it's called a trilogy because then there's 3 more books after. It's like there's 2 trilogies combined or something. I don't know what happened with that.
Series.
So this picks up right where Red Rising left off, so I can't really talk about the plot or anything. But this book is heavy on the politics, which was interesting at times, but it also felt like it was bogging me down most of the time. But as usual, it ended on a massive cliffhanger. Something big just happened that's going to change the trajectory of like everything they were working towards in this book. So I'm not really sure how we're going to recover. So, I don't know. As far as, like, star rating goes, I gave Red Rising 4. I probably would give this one a 3. Maybe 3.25.
I feel like so many books could be saved by being a duology and just making the first and second book longer, because second books always suck.
Yeah.
I feel like
it was also hard because this book is probably 100 pages more than Red Rising, so it's one POV. The whole book.
That's gross.
Again, I don't know. Like, we were watching Sarah Crowley's video and she was reading Red Rising and she was talking about how it's hard to visually imagine this world because there's not a lot of detail as far as like what things look like or smell like or like, I don't know. There's just a lot left to the imagination, which I guess could be good, but it's hard to let your imagination run wild when you have nothing to go off of.
Well, for sci-fi especially, like, you're telling me you created this whole world, but you can't tell me what it looks like, so then what do you imagine if it's not real? If it's like contemporary, there's plenty to imagine.
Yeah. Anyways, I am gonna finish this series, like, definitely, without a doubt. It's just not like high up on my priority list right now, so yeah.
Okay, my first book, I reread Chamber of Secrets via audiobook. It was great.
I like that you're holding that one and you listen to the audiobook.
Well, listen, I'm too lazy to put up a picture, and secondly,
too lazy to climb atop a ladder.
Yeah, all our actual like normal sized Harry Potters don't have their dust jackets on them. I don't even think we have them.
Yeah, they're somewhere.
So this is what we're going with, okay?
Give me a bit.
This would definitely be a 5-star for me.
Obviously.
Kind of goes without saying. But just also the audiobook experience was a 10 out of 10. Gilderoy Lockhart in that book is just amazing. Everything was great. And
was the narrator good?
Yeah. I read this book probably when I was like 11 or 12. Yeah. And I didn't really pick up on all the differences, like the book versus the movie, and I definitely picked up on them this time. And there's a lot, and I feel like it's almost a little darker than the movie, and I wish they would have included certain things, but I'll get over it. At least I got to read it.
Yeah. Okay, next I picked up The Lost Queen by Senye Pike. We're going to go with that. This is the first book in what I thought was a duology, but it's actually at least a trilogy, and the third book comes out in November or December. But this is kind of set in like Celtic folklore. We have like the Pendragon, if you're familiar with that story, and then we also have kind of where the Merlin origin story came from. But this book is just the quintessential peak joy of atmospheric. Like, you can, it's totally the opposite of this, which is why I think I enjoyed it so much, because I could just picture everything like foggy, and the mountains and the castles and like the knights going to battle. Just everything was very visually appealing in word format, if that makes sense. But this is also like, it had action, it had drama, it had politics, it had romance, but more than anything, it had like emotional
damage,
depth to it. And yes, it ends on a major cliffhanger as well. So I definitely plan on picking up the second book of this. I already have it. I'll probably wait and read it in November because I'm wanting to save all my spooky reads for October. But this is like highly underrated, and it should get a lot more attention than it has. So if you've seen this floating around or you have it on your shelves, pick her up. She deserves it.
Yeah. My next book, I did 100% not enjoy.
Oh no.
And that is Impractical Magic by Emily
I forgot you read that.
Rimore. And I got this as an ARC. I don't know if it's out
so
yet.
Cute.
It released yesterday. And this says, perfect for fans of Gilmore Girls and Charmed. And I didn't know that meant it was going to be a ripoff of Gilmore Girls.
We haven't seen Charmed, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, if
it was
that's
definitely Charmed vibes, because I know Charmed is about 3 sisters.
Oh.
This is 3 sisters. And this is about Scarlett. And she comes back home, hasn't seen her family in like a decade, I think. They live in this witchy town. Anyone that comes into the town that's not a witch, like, immediately forgets they were there when they leave. So they don't have to hide their magic because there's like a forgetting spell on the town. Well, her sisters call her back because something's wrong with the magic in the town. That's why it's called Impractical Magic. Because it's not working. And then she has to like reunite with her old flame. But they never dated, so I don't know why it says that in the synopsis.
So it's like a one-sided flame.
They were like friends that wanted to date, but they never did.
Twin flames.
Yeah. And Scarlett is just like so annoying. Something happened that made her leave the town. You find out eventually what it is. But like, it's been 10 years.
Is the thing that made her leave the town like worthy of her leaving the town? Because I hate when it's like not even that big of a deal. Was it merited?
I mean, what happened was a pretty big deal, but like it wasn't really her fault. But she like just always has pity parties, so she's like, it's not my fault, they're all gonna hate me, I have to leave. And like hasn't even spoke to her mom in 10 years. And so like the whole book, her entire family's just fighting because they haven't been around each other in 10 years. Nobody really understands why she left because she wouldn't tell them. But the real problem for me was that like, okay, if you're going to admit that you are Gilmore Girls vibes, that's fine. Like, it's just going to happen. Like Lori Gilmore, Pumpkin Spice Cafe. It's pretty obvious that that's what they're getting inspiration from. But this had lines, specific lines from episodes of Gilmore Girls that were too specific for you to be like, oh, that could have been from anything. Like, no. I looked up the lines,
the words,
the script of a certain episode, and it was exactly the same. And so that's kind of where I draw the line.
Like, so, it's crossing the line of inspiration to like,
yeah. And this was a debut novel. So I'm like, you're trying to convince everyone that you are a really good writer, but you're just taking already written words and not crediting them until the last page of the
pretty low score on Goodreads.
Till the last page of the acknowledgments, it does say like, oh, thank you to this and to this and to this and to this for all the inspiration. Like, but it's not inspiration, it's imitation. Anyways, that's that one.
Okay. All right. After I read The Lost Queen, I don't know why I said it like that. I decided to pick up Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. I've never read anything by her before, but for some reason this was just like calling to me. But this is about a girl who kind of like, as she's becoming an adult, graduates from high school, she realizes that she has inherited her birth mother's apartment, and it's this apartment on this small coastal island in South Carolina. And so she decides to move there right after she graduates high school to kind of like see if she can learn some things about her mom and feel closer to her. And she ends up meeting like all of her neighbors, we'll say, because they're just like, it's like this little apartment community. Like there's like 5 or 6 neighbors. She ends up meeting them, like really wants to become friends with them, and then all of a sudden one of the neighbors dies like very quickly into the book. And so they're trying to like solve her murder, but also learn more about the woman that died, because she was like a major hoarder. And so our main girl, what is her name? Zoe, she gets hired by like the apartment manager to go through this hoarder lady's stuff to try to find something specific. Like he gives her very specific instructions of like what he's trying to find. And so she ends up doing that. So there's like a mystery element. There's a lot of found family because there's like this small community of neighbors, and Zoe doesn't really know anyone, doesn't have a relationship with her dad, never really knew her birth mother that well. And so she's very like lost and kind of trying to find her identity. And so the other people in this community kind of like take her under their wing and befriend her and all of that stuff. But it's like super cute, super kind of like gives cozy mystery vibes, but there's a more steady plot, so I didn't feel like it was lagging at all. And it's a pretty short read. It's not even 300 pages, but there are like ghost elements in the story because the people in this apartment complex kind of have like different ghosts that are lingering with them for various reasons. So there's that element as well. So it's like a good book to read going into fall spooky season because it's kind of like getting you ready for those vibes. But I enjoyed it. I thought her writing was really pretty. So I would recommend this. I would probably give it 4 stars. Oh, this was like a 5-star read for me, by the way. In case we didn't.
It was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Okay, my next book was a memoir that I also listened to, and it was The Many Lives of Mama Love, a memoir of line stealing, writing, and healing. I almost like kept forgetting this was a memoir when I was reading it, just because it was so well written. Like I never was bored, and there were so many people that you started to view them like characters. Anyways, this is about Laura Love, and she's just a normal suburban mom, but she starts stealing people's credit cards and prescription pills, becomes addicted to them. She goes to jail, and this is like the story of how she got to jail, her time in jail, getting out of jail, finding a job after being in jail. And it was, I thought, really good. I thought it was really well done, and she like never justifies anything. Also, like she never is like, well, if someone would have just you know, been there for me, this would have happened. Like she totally takes ownership of her actions, but also her life after she gets out of jail. And I just thought it was really great.
And the reason it's so well written is because she isn't a writer by trade. She's a ghostwriter by trade. So I don't know, like I read this whenever, and I was like thinking about reading like Britney Spears' memoir versus this. And Britney Spears' memoir, it's almost like you're reading it in her voice and like her way of saying things. But this was, it was very well written.
Yeah, it was
very intentional.
Also, I've never seen someone really write a memoir about this. I feel like memoirs nowadays are just all celebrities only, and it's not like anything that will have like a historical weight to it, really. But I thought it was really great. If I was going to rate it, probably 5 stars. Because it was just so good.
Yep. Okay, next I decided to pick up Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco? Maniscalco? Sure.
Because.
This is the new cover. Emmelynn's already read the first 2 books in the series. Just this one? And I didn't really, I don't know, like, I am interested by the lore of Jack the Ripper. I've read and watched other things that involve that historically, but I never really thought about picking this up until I saw that the cover had been revamped, honestly.
That's crazy.
Because the covers are just kind of cringy to me. I don't like covers with people on them.
At least it's not like her whole face.
Yeah. But I saw this at a Barnes & Noble in Durham, and I didn't buy it. And then I left and kept thinking about, like, why didn't I buy that? So I tried to look it up to buy it, and you couldn't find it anywhere. Like, I thought I was going crazy. And then I saw it finally in our Barnes & Noble. But this is the story of a girl who is, I can't even remember her name, Audrey Rose. Which is, like, such a southern name, actually, to have 2 names, like Emmalynn. Anyways, her name is Audrey Rose. This is set during Victorian times. She's supposed to be, like, you know, a lady of society and, like, learning how to cross stitch and needlepoint and, like, host parties and all of that. But in her spare time, she likes to go dissect dead bodies with her uncle. And so in doing all of that, she kind of has to keep it a secret from her dad. And then all of a sudden, all of these murders start occurring. And so they're kind of left to try to help the police department figure out who is killing all of these people. And then there's, like, so there's that mystery. And then there's some other things that come into play. And she has to just kind of go against societal norms to try to figure this out. There's some romance. That was pretty good. It was like, I would say it's like a 3-star read for me. Like, there were some parts that were more interesting than others. There are pictures in here, which is cool, of, like, autopsies, I guess. But, so that gives it, like, kind of the gothic vibe, but it was just okay. Like, I would read the next book in the series, but I'm not, like, dying to, you know. I don't know that I would buy it either unless the cover was also revamped, so. It was good for getting into the vibes, but not my favorite.
Okay, next I read Assistant to the Villain, and then a little later I read Apprentice to the Villain. I feel like most people like the second book less, but I kind of liked it more. I don't know if it's because when I was reading Assistant to the Villain, I was kind of falling into a slump. So maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much. But this follows Evie Sage, and she's looking for a job. Her dad has this, like, really rare sickness that a lot of people in the kingdom have. There's no cure. And so she's like, I have to find a job and support my family. And one day she runs into the villain, is literally his name. I mean, we do learn his, like, actual name, but that's what he's known as, just the villain. And he offers her a job to be his assistant in his manor. And it's, like, this magical manor that's completely hidden to everyone else. And it's just really funny overall. Like, it's just a funny book.
Princess Bride, like that kind of humor, or
yeah, it honestly reminds me of Ella Enchanted.
Oh yeah, you said
just
that,
because I always picture it in like medieval outfits, but then Ella Enchanted's such a funny movie, and just like I could imagine the main character like breaking out into song. Yeah, like she's just really funny. And then we also have the villain's POV, which I did like too. And then we have this cute little frog. Where is he? He is important. He's in both books. Don't worry.
His name's Kingsley, right?
Yes. We do learn more about Kingsley. But anyways, one day Evie discovers there's like someone that's, I guess, what would the word be? one of their employers is ratting them out to the king.
Oh.
And so she's trying to figure out who the villain's villain is, basically. Who under his employment is out to get him. And there's a lot of found family.
So like they're like a traitor to him, yeah.
There's a lot of found family in this that I really enjoyed. It was overall just funny, and I feel like you have to go into it knowing that and like expecting it to be kind of stupid, but it's supposed to be, because I saw so many reviews that was like, this is not funny, I didn't laugh, and I'm like, what does funny mean to you? Funny doesn't mean your sense of humor, like a joke you would make. It's just like a fun,
like ironic and
book. Like it's just a fun book. And if you like aren't in the mood for something super contemporary,
people are also like expecting to be more heavy fantasy, and
I don't know,
more
but
lighthearted.
I feel like it was perfect because I didn't want to read like a contemporary romance, but I didn't really want to read a fantasy, and so this was a good in between that like nothing was too hard to understand. So I'd probably give the series overall so far like a 4-star.
So is that a duology, or is
there's going to be a third?
Oh, there is.
I just have to wait.
I didn't know that. This book I kind of picked up on our whim. Sometimes I get in like these weird moods, and I like really want to read a book by a certain author. And for some reason, I just really wanted to read something by Ted Dekker. I've read quite a few books of his before, but this one really intrigued me because the premise of this book reminded me a lot of The Village, which is like one of our favorite spooky fall time movies. And I will say that probably the first quarter of this book stayed true to that. Like, it did remind me of The Village. I was getting those vibes. But then, okay, so here's kind of what happens. There's this religious community in the backwood hills of Tennessee, and they're very set in their ways and their rituals and everything, just like in The Village. And instead of them, like, what was it that they couldn't go, like, out of their perimeter in The Village?
Yeah, I feel like there was something,
like, don't cross that. But in this one, they have, like, a red rope on the perimeter of their village. And so they're not supposed to go past that, because if they do, then they will get attacked by the Fury. And so the Fury is kind of like their monster, but it's not just one. It's like the whole world has been basically taken over by the Fury. That's what they think. And they think this because this like prophet / angel / something appeared to their leader and was like, this is like, the Fury is going to come and like purge the world, and you need to stay in the perimeters of this community until the Fury is like done judging the world. And you'll know when it's done because like I'll give you a sign, and when I give you that sign, it's safe to come out. So they've been doing this for like 7 or 10 years or something. So our main girl, I don't even remember her name, Grace. She is at the very beginning of the book. She's like standing at the perimeter of their community because her brother has decided to venture out of the perimeter. And he's done this a couple of times, and he always comes back safe. And she's like, well, that's weird, because like, how is he not getting attacked by the Fury? So he ends up like telling everyone, hey, it's safe to go out of our perimeter. The Fury is gone. And so they get mad and like banish him and Grace out of their community, and is like, if you survive the night, then we'll know there's no Fury left and you can come back and like report to us. So they do, and then that kind of like sets some things into motion. Some things, like the trajectory it went was not, there's like a certain, I wouldn't say trope, but like a certain direction that they went with this that I was like, I do not like it. It kind of ruined it for me. So I would give this a 3. It was like, I liked the beginning, and then I was just honestly skimming it. So I don't know that I would recommend it. Maybe I would give it more like a 2.75 if we were going to be technical. So that's, I have one left, so you can finish up.
My next one is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rukalek.
Recollect. I don't know.
Anyways, I was going to buy this and then I found out it was recently put on Kindle Unlimited. This follows Mallory Quinn, who is fresh out of rehab and...
Brush out the slimer.
That's what I was trying not to say. She takes a job as a nanny for this little boy, Teddy, who's 5 years old, and his parents, Ted and Caroline, they're like super wealthy. They both work, and Mallory is going to live in essentially their pool house. It's like a guest house, but barely anything in it, just a bed and a bathroom pretty much. And she goes out on these nightly runs, and when she comes back at night, she starts hearing things. And Teddy also loves to draw, and his drawings start to get more and more disturbing. And so first it's like she's hearing these things in her room and thinks someone's watching her sleep, and then these drawings start to get really weird. And so then she learns about this lady that was kidnapped in the little pool house that she was living in, and thinks it's like the ghost of her haunting Teddy, haunting her, watching her at night. And so she tries to figure out what's going on. The parents like think she's going crazy.
They also kind of think Teddy's going crazy.
Yeah, there's this like old neighbor that like tries to convince Mallory to do all these like seances, and then there's like the landscaper that's also helping Mallory figure all this out. It's just a really good time, really dark. So I would say look up the trigger warnings, but all the artwork is included in the book, and it's crazy.
It's wild, yeah.
It's crazy. So, highly recommend. I would say it's like a 4.5. I feel like the pacing was very inconsistent. Only scenes if something was happening. It'd be like 2 weeks later, this happens. I'm like, well, what was happening during these 2 weeks? Nothing. You could have included like one normal scene after every crazy scene, in my opinion. But that was that one.
Okay, the last book I read this month was a reread, and that was of Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis. I went down this rabbit hole of like what order to read the Chronicles of Narnia in, and I landed on just go ahead and reading them the way C.S. Lewis wrote them in what order he wrote them in, and that was like his desire is for them to be read in the order he wrote them, not necessarily in chronological order. So this comes after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the order that he wrote them. And this takes place back in Narnia. Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter are back in like the real world, and they abruptly get called back to Narnia. They don't know how or why, but they quickly learn that Prince Caspian has used Susan's horn that Aslan gave her to use like whenever you're in need of help. And when he blew the horn, it called the four of them back to help him kind of like reclaim Narnia for the good and reclaim Narnia back to him as the rightful heir of Narnia. So, I had read this already. I reread Chronicles of Narnia not that long ago. Like, we all read it about a year ago, I think.
Not Chronicles of Narnia, just The Lion.
Well, The Lion, yeah.
Last year.
And I love that book because Aslan has such, like, a strong presence in that book. And to me, Aslan is, like, probably one of my favorite characters in any book. And just, like, the things that he says are really impactful to me as a Christian and give me like a really, I don't know, like a clear glimpse into like what Christ did for us. But Aslan is not a huge part of this story, and so I was kind of sad about that. And it made me, I mean, I still liked it and still enjoyed it, but I was wanting like more of his wisdom and his guidance and just like the things that he would say as encouragement to Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund. Mm-hmm. We got a couple of those, but not as much. So I did enjoy this. I would never rate, I don't think I I mean, as far as enjoyment, I would say this is probably like a 4-star, but like overall, the Chronicles of Narnia is a 5-star for me. But yeah, I want to keep reading these in the order that C.S. Lewis wrote them. So I think the next one would be The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So it is very different than the book. I mean, than the movie, which I didn't really realize until I read it again. So that was kind of interesting to reflect on.
Okay, my next book was completely different than my last. And that is 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I totally get the hype now. And I just really appreciate the uniqueness of her books. It's like she comes up with plots instead of most romance authors just come up with tropes, I feel like. So there's always like an actual plot going on in these books. And this follows Clementine West, and she's a book publicist. And her aunt just died about 6 months ago, and she was super close with her aunt. Her aunt left her apartment, and she would always tell her stories when she was a kid about like how the apartment's magical and it's like a pinch in time, and it's magical, like you just have to believe her. And she never believed her. And so she moves in to her aunt's apartment, wakes up, and there's this strange man just in her apartment. And then she also looks around and realizes that like it's not her furniture that's in there, it's her aunt's furniture. She looks at the calendar and it's like from 7 years ago. And so she starts to believe her aunt. And so like whenever you need it most, the apartment takes you to 7 years in the past. And so this guy, oh my gosh, what was his name? I can't remember his name at all. Well, he was really great though, promise. He's in her apartment and she starts falling for him, and then in present time she's like trying to figure out who he is and how to reconnect with him. It was a little bit insta-lovey, but it was just fun, so like I didn't really care. But there was also like, you know, some serious things going on with her grief with her aunt, and like being back 7 years in the past and knowing that her aunt would have been alive then, and how her aunt died impacts her too. And there's just a lot of like found family in this book too. And the main male character, can't remember his name, he's a chef, and something about books with food elements are just like ultimate cozy vibes. They're just so good, because I feel like there's no other like...
There's no language like food.
Well, there's no other career that you can like describe so well and picture so well for someone to have in a book. And
well, it like appears to all senses.
And food is obviously a love language.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I thought this was really good. I don't know what to rate it because I also just like needed a fast-paced book, so I'll put it on the screen after I think about it for a little longer. And then my last book was another thriller, and I read All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. I know she has another book coming out in like April or May. And this follows, why do I remember nobody's names? Margot. And she goes back to her hometown because her uncle has like early dementia. He's starting to forget things. His wife passed away. And so she's kind of the only one left that cares about him, and she knows he absolutely will not take a caregiver. And she is not a publicist.
Like an editor, I think? Or a writer.
Not a publicist. What's the word? Journalist.
Yeah.
She's a journalist. I'll use writer. Books are confusing me. And when she was a kid and lived in this town, this disappearance took place that turned into a murder. And now she's back in this town, and another little girl just disappeared and then was found dead. And so she was like, I believe these are connected. I'm going to write a story about it. I'm going to figure this out. And so that's what she does. So we have that point of view, and then we have the point of view of the little girl's mom that died in the 90s also. So we like see what's happening as Margot's finding it out, which I thought was really interesting. I liked both POVs. I obviously like Margot's better. I think that was kind of the point. But the ending of this book was crazy and also very controversial. I didn't think it would be, but like all the Goodreads reviews are saying like they hated the ending. I'm like, why? I thought it was really unique. Like, I don't see that very often. It wasn't like a complete happy ending, which it's a thriller. Like, I don't really think it should be happy. So, yeah, I would give that one probably a 4-star.
Okay.
So those are all the books we read.
Yep.
I think it was very well-rounded genres.
Yeah.
For both of us.
Pretty good. But anyways, those are all the books we've read in September. And I'm super excited for October's TBR, honestly. So I'm ready to get into it, which I already am. But I'm ready to make a lot of
really commit to it.
Headway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For watching, like and subscribe if you want, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.